Yeah. Blackjack. Life is like a game of cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Yeah. Blackjack. To play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
If it wasn't for Rolling Work promoting the Hollywood Athletic Club on Wednesday, October 18th, 1995, Tupac would have never met Faith Evans to be able to record You Wonder Why They Call You Bitch the next day on the 19th, and subsequently have sex with her later on that night after the studio, which would in turn would inspire one of the greatest diss songs of all time, Hit 'Em Up. Before I walk you through one of the most infamous nights in hip-hop history, I want you to know that on the day that Tupac and Faith Evans recorded You Wonder Why They Call You Bitch, Tupac did not pick Faith Evans up from some guy's house like she wanted it to appear to the readers of her 2008 book. As Faith Evans said, quote, "It was Tupac himself driving a black convertible Mercedes Benz." The truth is, Faith Evans drove her cherry red BMW back to the Peninsula Hotel after being there the night before when she first met Tupac. Tupac would then proceed to drive himself and Faith Evans with death row security following close behind to Can-Am Studios. The reason why Faith Evans would tell that lie after Tupac's death is because she couldn't admit in her book that she drove back to Tupac's hotel again after she was there just the night before. By lying and saying Tupac came and picked her up would make the uninformed reader think that Tupac was really after her, and it would give her plausible deniability. You're asking yourself, how do you know he didn't go pick her up? Because after the studio session, in which Faith denied ever occurred in 1996, but all of a sudden would admit in her book in 2008, as she said, quote, "I agreed to ride with him to the Peninsula Hotel where he was staying." Mind you, this would be after the studio session was over. Upon writing her book, to make it seem more interesting, Faith Evans came up with a fictional story about how to turn Tupac Shakur into a desperate trick who would allegedly proposition her for sex in exchange for 25 grand that Faith Evans had already earned from doing the studio session. But turning Tupac into Proposition Joe wouldn't be enough. Now Faith Evans would have to tell a story about how she refused Tupac's advances and wanted to leave Tupac's hotel room, and Tupac somehow would become angry and full of rage and allegedly say, quote, "You want to leave? Tell a driver to take you home. The limo is still out there. Get the fuck out." If you've really been paying attention to these facts that I just laid out, you would be asking yourself, what limo? I thought Faith said that Tupac came and picked her up in a convertible black Mercedes. I thought Faith Evans said she agreed to ride back with Tupac to the Peninsula Hotel where he was staying to get her 25 grand, according to her book. But the truth is, Faith drove away from the Peninsula like she drove to the Peninsula in her cherry red convertible M3 BMW, happily, into the California night. You see, either you're riding with Tupac's truth or you're riding with Faith Evans' lies. You can't ride in both cars at the same time. Now let me tell you about this historical night in hip-hop history that spawned all the madness to follow. On this particular night, on October 18th, 1995, Tupac had been out of jail for exactly 6 days as he was released from prison on the 12th of October 1995. A friend of mine by the name of Rolling Work, who's pictured in the lower right side with the glasses on in the Coogee sweater. You see, Rolling, who recently passed away a few days ago, may he rest in peace, was one of the #1 black promoters in Hollywood, and he held an event at a place called the Hollywood Athletic Club every Wednesday night. This particular Wednesday night, I was in our studio, which was located on Hollywood Boulevard, approximately a mile away from the Hollywood Athletic Club, working with hip-hop legends Melly Mel and Scorpio from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame group Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. They were working on a new album called Right Now, which I was blessed to be featured on a couple of songs. After I got finished recording my parts on the songs that we were recording that night, I decided to go to the Hollywood Athletic Club, in which I usually did every Wednesday night. It was the place to be. When I reached the Hollywood Athletic Club, it was pumping. It was packed. The line was long, the ladies were sexy, and the line was wrapped around the building. As I stood outside a little ways from the door, just checking out the scenery, as I looked to my left, I saw a two-tone convertible SL 500 Mercedes, brand new, pull up. And I'll be damned, it was Tupac, and Frank Alexander was on the passenger side. As I was standing on the curb, I could hear the ladies behind me that were standing in line going crazy. Like, girl, that's Tupac. Oh my God. Approximately 1 or 2 minutes later, our cherry red M3 BMW pulls up behind Tupac's Mercedes, and I recognized that it was Faith Evans with some girlfriends in the car. Real talk, it was like some shit out of a movie. Tupac then jumps out of his Mercedes without opening the door, right hand on the top side of the convertible windshield, left hand on the top side of the driver's door. Tupac with his fly-footed bop then walked up to the driver's side door of Faith Evans' red BMW, and that's when I said, yo, Pac. He looked up at me and told me to hold on for a minute as he leaned over and began talking to Faith Evans. I really didn't feel like waiting for Tupac to get finished his conversation with Faith, so I made my way to the club door. As I seen Roland Work standing outside, we shook hands and he told me to go on in, bypassing the line. Faith Evans has pushed the narrative that Tretch introduced her to Tupac. That's simply not true. As I watched with my own eyes, Tupac and Faith had a lengthy conversation outside the club, and they were introduced to each other by each other. As I got inside the club, almost immediately, the first person I see leaning up against the wall was Tretch from Naughty by Nature. We spoke, shook hands, and said what's up. Then I mentioned to him that I just saw Tupac outside talking to Faith Evans, and Tretch replied, yeah, I'm waiting on him. As me and Tretch were talking, as I looked to my right, where all the pool tables and people were sitting, I spotted a beautiful black female and asked Tretch, is that Arnell Simpson? And he replied, yeah, she with me. As I looked back at him and shook his hand once again, giving him mad props, as I said, my man. I actually walked over and introduced myself to Arnell with Tretch's permission, as Arnell was kind of like a celebrity now, after testifying in her father O.J. Simpson's highly publicized murder trial. By that time, Tupac had entered the club by then. It was truly all eyes on him, as very few people knew that he was out of jail. Faith Evans and her friends entered the club, and everybody was just mingling and having a good time. I can say this. Arnell Simpson was formally introduced to Tupac by Tretch, not Faith Evans. The promoter Roland Work always had a photographer working on his behalf, as it was nothing to see A-list black celebrities at his events. That's how this photo with Faith Evans, Tretch, Nikki from Brownstone, Roland Work, Robert Betts, and the guy I'm not familiar with was taken. Rest in peace, Roland Work. As myself and Tupac finally began to have a conversation after all of the well wishes and welcome homes, Tupac wanted to step outside and smoke a cigarette. Frank Alexander then walked up to an in-house security guard who then guided us to a side door leading to the outside of the Hollywood Athletic Club into the parking lot. As our conversation continued outside and Tupac was telling me how happy he was to be out of jail and how just last week he was in a maximum security prison in New York and now he was back in Hollywood smoking a cigarette. All of a sudden, as we look to our left, we see Faith Evans and one of her girlfriends walking across the parking lot. They were walking back to her red BMW, and Tupac yells out, y'all leaving? And Faith Evans says, no. And Tupac says, we about to go back to my hotel. What y'all gonna do? And Faith Evans replied, we gonna follow you. And true to her word, Faith Evans and her friends followed Tupac back to his hotel room on the first night she met him, on October 18th, 1995. That's where they would smoke some weed, and they talked about her guest appearance on You Wonder Why They Call You Bitch, in which they recorded the very next day on October 19th, 1995. If you think adding a fictional limo that didn't exist to hide the fact as to how Faith Evans got back home from Tupac's hotel room that night on October 19th, 1995, after they had sex? Then check this out. You see this paragraph right here from Faith Evans' book? Study it. If you take the words "at the hotel" in that paragraph and replace them with "at the Hollywood Athletic Club," and then take the words "at the hotel" and place them after "we hung out," that's what happened after the Hollywood Athletic Club on the 18th. Faith Evans used a lie about a fake party that allegedly occurred at the same hotel Tupac was staying at as for the reason this conversation occurred. But in all reality, this conversation occurred after the Hollywood Athletic Club back at Tupac's hotel room. There was no party. The only party was at the Hollywood Athletic Club. That paragraph was manipulated to hide the fact that she went back to Tupac's hotel room on the first night that she met him. But see, what she forgot to replace was the fact that she had a conversation about her guest appearance. You see, sometimes when you lie, you mix up and you get mixed up and you tell a little bit of the truth with the lie. See, we know that because the song was recorded the next day on the 19th. So if you talked about your guest appearance on the 18th, is the only day that you could have done that because the song was recorded the next day. The story Faith Evans fabricated about Tupac propositioning her could have only happened on the night of October 19th, 1995, as that was the last night she was ever in a hotel with Tupac. But in her book, she would lie and say it happened after November 14th, 1995, because Faith knew that the last pictures of her and Tupac were taken on the night of November 14th, 1995, at a party Tupac was invited to by Whitney Houston. So Faith Evans knew and premeditated that if she was going to lie about Tupac in regards to him being some thug monster, in her book as the main attraction, playing on the public's perception from Tupac's New York City real-life case, then the incident that they were going to lie about had to happen after the 14th of November 1995. Any day sooner, then you would know from these pictures what you now know today from firsthand information, that Faith Evans lied in her book about Tupac to gain publicity, besmirching his name after his death. So you say to yourself, why in God's name would Faith Evans lie like that? And I say to you, so that in God's name you would know that Tupac was telling the truth. You haven't heard the saying, sometimes a lie reveals the truth? It's called the McGurk effect. Your boy, Delray, Straight Game.